Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रीगीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधिता भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथिता पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यास विशालबुद्धे लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं लोके सज्जनषट्परैरहरहः पीतीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसिन श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणीन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः देवी साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
हरि ओम। So today we are starting chapter 17, Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, the yoga of the threefold faith. So another beautiful chapter with lot of practical tips that Bhagavan gives human beings to follow. Actually, chapter 16, 17 and even chapter 18, all through Bhagavad Gita, we have noted down a lot of sadhanas. But the last three chapters, especially chapter 16 and 17, lots of practical tips for us to understand, listen to, understand and follow. So again, another beautiful chapter. So essentially, these are behaviors to practice that we can actually adopt and we can practice. It is up to us, in chapter 16, Bhagavan had categorized people who have Daivi possessions or Sampad and Asuri Sampad, the divine possessions or demoniacal possessions. And it is up to us whether we want to practice being a Daiva or an Asura. It is entirely up to us. Nature comprises of both. And human nature also being part of nature comprises of both. And both of these natures, both the Daivi and the Asuri, are battling within us for supremacy. There's actually a constant tug of war going on between the natures within us for supremacy. We also saw that when we did chapter 14, when we talked about Gunatraya Vibhaga, right? And we saw that there is a constant tug of war going on between Sattva, Rajas and Tamas to ascend over one of them to ascend over the other two. So this battle of supremacy is going on, and what we feed is the one that wins. So it is entirely up to us in terms of what is the kind of behavioral traits, what is the kind of gunas, what is the kind of nature, what is the kind of aspects that we want to be in terms of our personality that we cultivate. And of course, what determines all of this is our inherent faith. And we can also cultivate our inherent faith. Actually, the Mahabharata itself, of which Bhagavad Gita is a part, is symbolically, it is a battle, inner battle between the good and the bad. That is what it symbolizes. In the Kathopanishad, Dharmaraja Yama, he says to Nachiketa, Kathopanishad is where the Dharmaraja, Lord of Death, Yama is the teacher, and Nachiketa, the young student, the young boy, is the student. And after Lord Yama feels that Nachiketa has qualified to learn about life after death, after that he says to Nachiketa, Shreyascha Preyascha Manushya Metaha Tausam Pritya Vivinakti Dhiraha Shreyo hi Dhirobi Preyaso Vrinite Preyo Mando Yogakshemat Vrinite. So Lord Yama is telling Nachiketa that the long-term good and the short-term pleasant both approach the human being at all times. At any given point in time, they are literally bombarding us. And one who has the intelligence, dhi, when he says, the dhi means intelligence. Dhirobi, intelligence. One who has the intelligence is able to, first of all, distinguish between what is really good and what appears to be good. This person is able to distinguish between the two. And the wise person prefers and chooses the good over the pleasant, the long-term good over what appears to be pleasant in the short term. And the ignorant person prefers the pleasant or short-term joy, compromising what is good in the long run. The level of Asuri Sampat in one determines the extent to which one goes after short-term benefit or preyaha. And the level of Daivi Sampat in a person determines the extent to which the person goes after or seeks the Shreyaha or long-term good. In the final two verses of chapter 16, Bhagavan describes the people who do not abide by the Shastra. And he directs human beings to hold on to the Shastra as the compass of their lives. as the lighthouse. We had talked about lighthouse last time, but this is the compass. The compass is something that gives us direction. He says, Shastra Vidhim Utsrijya, those who give up the Shastra, knowing about the Shastra, knowing about the scriptures and rejecting them. And why do they do that? They do that because Vartate Kama Karataha, because they are impelled by their selfish wishes and wants. They are impelled by the Priya, which gives them immediate joy. They are drawn magnetically towards the samsara. That is why they reject the scriptures, or they refuse to follow it, or they choose not to follow it, or they choose to ignore what is there, what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. They ignore it, even if they know. Such people, they come under the spell of Kama, Krodha and Lobha and become tamasic. And thus they lead an Asuri way of life. And on the contrary, Bhagavan says, Nyatva Shastra Vidhanoktam, those who understand what is stated in the scriptures, not just be aware, not just read, but they also need to understand what is stated in the scriptures. And when they understand it is when you make it the compass of your life. Like the lighthouse example that we gave, for the captain of the ship that is lost in the seas to understand which is the lighthouse. You know, if you're not hallucinating, if you're hallucinating in the dark seas, you will see multiple places. It actually really happens in the seas. You don't really know what is what, you know, where you're going, right? Some light appears like a lighthouse in the far doesn't look like lighthouse in the, when you're in the beach. It's like a small faint light, and there'll be starlights, there'll be other celestial lights. You can get confused between, you know, the light of the lighthouse and the light of other, you know, small dots that are appearing in the horizon. It's like being in a safari and you see lots of, if you go to a night safari, you'll see lots of eyes. You know, the guide will tell you these eyes are that of a tiger, these eyes are that of a deer. And you'll be like, oh, okay. You know, you won't have a clue which eye belongs to which animal. Similarly, for us to understand what belongs where, that is very, very critical. So people who Shastra Nyatva Shastra Vidhanoktam, who know the Shastra and also understand the Shastra, not only that, they have the faith to follow the Shastra. These people overcome, because all nature is there, all characteristics, all traits are there within us. Daivi Sampat is there, so much so Asuri Sampat is also there. So such people overcome Kama by Dhamma, which is desire by self-control, Krodha by Daya, anger by compassion, and Lobha by Dana, the greed by giving selflessly. And these people, in such a manner, they lead a Daivi way of life. Now, Arjuna comes with his next question. We have seen through the Bhagavad Gita, you know, Arjuna asking questions at appropriate times. And these questions are brilliant, actually. And he comes up with his next question. And he says, okay, Bhagavan, I have understood these two categories that you have so explained so very well to me. I have clearly understood. But then I can think of a third category. And his question is, and I'm going to precede Sarika here, his question is, he says, Ye Shastra Vidhimutsrijya Yajante Shraddhayanvitaha Tesham Nishtha Krishna Satvamaho Rajasthamaha. So he says, those who do not follow the scriptures, yet they worship with faith. In what are they established, O Krishna? He addresses Krishna as Bhagavan. Krishna is Lord Krishna, O Bhagavan, the protector of the weak. Do they get established in Sattva or in Rajas or in Tamas? So Bhagavan had categorized two kinds of people. Those who follow the Shastra with faith because they understand it, and those who, knowing fully well about the Shastra, discard it because they do not have the inclination or the time or the faith in the scriptures. Arjuna asks about those who are unable to follow the Shastra because they have not had the chance to study them. But such people still have faith. They inherently have faith. Maybe because of the elders, maybe because of the culture they belong to, whatever the reason may be, they have inherent faith. So what a beautiful question. Okay, so just to repeat, Bhagavan had talked about two kinds of people, those who have faith in the Shastra and because they understand the Shastra, they have the faith, they have the alignment, and they choose to follow the scriptures. Essentially, they choose to lead a sattvic way of life. And then there are people who discard the Shastras because they simply do not believe in the Shastras, the scriptures, or they know about it but choose not to believe it. They are drawn towards samsara in such a manner. Maybe I just stop a bit here. They are drawn towards samsara in such a manner that they discard the scriptures. They choose not to follow. And Arjuna comes up with what I would, and I think what all of us would agree is a fairly brilliant question. What about those who have never had the chance to read the Shastras? They have not had the opportunity, or for some reason whatsoever. People are living in this world, they are performing their duties, they are living their life. Based on your circumstances, we are impelled and compelled to do a lot of things. Okay, for example, a lot of us, I'm sure this resonates with all of us. Ever since we were born, the idea was to how we can get into the mainstream, perform well in school. Well, the schools never taught Shastras. Okay, even though we grew up in India, most of us, I believe that some places in Germany teach Shastra, but Indian scriptures like Bhagavad Gita. But here in India, most schools did not. And we have to get the marks, we have to get into a good school, to a good college, to a good organization, and so on and so forth. Some schools in India also teach, like Sarika was fortunate enough, when she grew up, to learn a lot of the Shastras, right? So some may be inclined, some may get the opportunity. What about those who are inclined, who have faith, but do not get the opportunity, is Arjuna's question. And we are classic examples, right? So that's why I feel this is a brilliant question. We have read the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. We may have heard about a lot of aspects of the Shastric teachings. What is ordained, what is recommended, what is taught, and so on and so forth. We also would have attended a lot of satsang by various gurus. We may be yoga exponents, but we do not know the Shastras. And we have to live our life in the samsaric environment that we have been born into. But this inherent faith, that makes us live a life of good conduct and have certain level of noble aspirations. Is it then, Arjuna asks, is it then in this kind of a situation, for such kind of people, is it a must, is it an absolute must, Bhagwan, that this person must know the scriptures and live a life in accordance with what is actually written in the scriptures? And Bhagwan himself had said, right, that with Kala, things get deteriorated. So with the passage of time, the scriptures also get deteriorated. What we see and what we read also, the source also gets deteriorated over a period of time. And then he said, Sakalena Mahata. And he said that he will come and rectify it. But it is a slow process of deterioration. In those situations, what does such a person do? We also saw, last satsang I referred to, Sri Ramana Maharishi referred to saying, I ask my inner core, the deity inside me, and I follow, right? So what do I do? What does this kind of a person do? The people who disregard Shastra, the scriptures, willfully, they are the Asuri Sampat kind of people, knowing Shastra and willfully not following the Shastra, and living a life that is not aligned to what is prescribed as good in the Shastra. And for all you know, maybe living a life that is aligned to what is prescribed as not good, what ought not to be done in the doctrines, but not knowing and hence being unable to follow. At the same time, having inherent faith. Can such people, so Bhagavan had talked about attaining perfection, attaining happiness, and attaining the supreme ultimate goal. And he categorized one set of people as they can attain and the other set of people cannot attain. Arjuna says, can such people attain the perfection? Can such people attain happiness? Can such people attain the supreme? That is his question. We have also seen in the earlier sections and chapters in Bhagavad Gita, we have witnessed the power of faith and how Shraddha leads to Jnana. And finally invokes Ananya Bhakti, single pointed devotion. Additionally, we have also seen how the gunas, the sattvic, rajasic, tamasic gunas, how they influence human behavior and how transcending the gunas help us attain liberation, leads to liberation. Arjuna's question is about the nature of devotion or bhakti of the people endowed with shraddha or faith, but without the knowledge or jnana of the scriptures. Is their devotion sattvic or rajasic or tamasic? Now, Bhagavan responds to this excellent question by giving a thorough explanation or exposition of faith. And not only just does he talk about faith, he talks about how faith manifests in various endeavors of the human being. In the physical indulgences, through mainly the physical indulgence, our main physical indulgence is what? Food, ahara. The sacrifice and worships that are performed by human beings, yajna. The austerities performed by human beings or tapas, and the charities performed by human beings or dana. Let's see these in this chapter.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Atha Saptadashodhyayaha.
Atha Saptadashodhyayaha.
Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yogaha.
Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yogaha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Ye Shastra Vidhi Musrijya.
Ye Shastra Vidhi Mutsrijya.
Yajante Shraddhayanvitaha.
Yajante Shraddhayanvitaha.
Tesham Nishtatu Ka Krishna.
Tesham Nishtatu Ka Krishna.
Sattvamaho Rajastamaha.
Sattvamaho Rajastamaha.
Arjuna Uvacha. Ye Shastra Vidhi Musrijya. Yajante Shraddhayanvitaha. Tesham Nishtatu Ka Krishna. Sattvamaho Rajastamaha.
So Arjuna says, Arjuna Vacha, Arjuna asks, Arjuna says, Ye, who? Yajante, worship. Shraddhayan vitaha, endowed with faith. Two, but. Two is in the second line of the verse. Two, but. Utsrijya, not abiding. Shastra vidhim, the teachings of the scriptures. Ka, what? Tesham, is there. Nishtha, state. Nishtha is where you are established. So what is their state? Where they are established. O Krishna, Sattvam, Sattva, Aho or Rajas Tamaha. Rajas or Tama, Tamaha, Tamas. Those who worship endowed with faith but not abiding by the teachings of the scriptures, what is their state, O Krishna? Sattva, Rajas or Tamas. Ordinary people who are playing various roles and performing various duties depending on their circumstances. This question is pertaining to those kind of people. Those people who by and large, note the word of by and large, are free of lust, are free of anger and are free of greed. Definitely not classified under the demoniacal type. Definitely not asuri. At the same time, these people have not acquired accurate as well as elaborate knowledge of the scriptures. Normal, sincere people, what is their state? Where are they established? Are they established in Sattvika, which takes them forward? Are they established in Rajasika, which keeps them where they are? Or are they established in Tamasika, which takes them backward? Let's see what Bhagavan responds.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha.
Trividha bhavati shraddha.
Trividha bhavati shraddha.
Dehinam sa svabhavaja.
Dehinam sa svabhavaja.
सात्विकी राजसी चैव
सात्विकी राजसी चैव
तामसी चेति तां शृणु
तामसी चेति तां शृणु
श्रीभगवानुवाच त्रिविधा भवति श्रद्धा देहिनां सा स्वभावजा सात्विकी राजसी चैव तामसी चेति तां शृणु.
Sri Bhagavan the blessed Lord said, Shraddha, the faith, Dehinam, of the embodied, Sa, which, Swabhavaja, is inherent in their nature. Bhavati is Trividha, threefold. Satviki, which is Satvik or pure. Rajasi, that is Rajasic or passionate. Cha, and Iva, even. Tamasi, Tamasic or dull / dark, you can say. And he says, Tam Shrinu, listen about it. The blessed Lord said, the faith of the embodied, which is inherent in their nature, is threefold. The Satvik, the Rajasic, and the Tamasic. Listen about it. So Bhagavan says what? Shraddha Dehinam, the Shraddha of the embodied, the faith which is there in the person who has the body, mind, and intellect. So such people, he says Swabhavaja is inherently present in their nature. Ja means born. Swabhava is nature. So they are born with this kind of whatever Shraddha they possess. So a person is born with their nature, and Bhagavan says that the faith of the person is inherent to their nature. Shraddha determines the texture of our vasanas. We have read a lot about our inherent tendencies or about our vasanas. Shraddha determines the texture of our vasanas. And in turn, vasanas determines the behavior of the individual. How the body, mind, and intellect conducts itself in the living environment. So a person's physical activities, the person's intellectual makeup, and the person's psychological behavior, demeanor, are all a product of one's Shraddha or faith. So Arjuna asked about the state in which the person is. And Bhagavan says it depends. So Bhagavan is not giving a straight answer. That is because he has a lot of explanation to do. And this entire chapter will be that explanation. So Bhagavan says it depends. Depends on the faith of that person. Depends on the type of faith of that person. And he continues.
Sattvanurupa sarvasya
Sattvanurupa sarvasya
Shraddha bhavati bharata
Shraddha bhavati bharata
Shraddham ayoyam purushaha
Shraddha mayoyam purushaha
Yo yat shraddha sa eva saha
Yo yat shraddha sa eva saha
Sattvanurupa sarvasya Shraddha bhavati bharata Shraddham ayoyam purushaha Yo yat shraddha sa eva saha.
So Bhagavan says, continues, Shraddha, the faith, Sarvasya, of all people. Sarvasya here indicates the type of people that Arjuna is asking about. Those type of people. And we have talked enough about it, so I'll not repeat which type of people again. So the type of people who are the third category that Arjuna is questioning. Those type of people, Sarvasya. Sattvanurupa, in accordance with one's nature. O Bharata, O king. Bharata, whenever he addresses Arjuna as the king. I am means a Purushaha, person. Shraddha Maya consists of one's faith. Yo yat Shraddha, what one's faith is, sa, one, eva, surely, saha, is that. So, the faith of each person is in accordance with one's nature, O Bharata. A person consists of one's faith, and what one's faith is, one surely is that. Just one small interjection here, Sarika, if later on you can just check, Shraddham Ayo Yam Purushaha or Shraddhamayo Yam Purushaha. Okay, so just check that, and if required, Shraddhamayo Yam Purushaha Yo Yat Shraddha Sa Eva Saha. I think that's how it should be. So Bhagavan says Shraddha, the faith, Sarvasya, of this category of people that we talked about. Sattvanurupa is according to one's nature. Sattva here refers to the nature of the person. The Rajas, the Tamas are implicitly understood within when Bhagavan says Sattvanurupa. Bhagavan could have said Gunanurupa. Right? He actually says Sattvanurupa. He uses Sattva to indicate the guna of the person. This is not to be misunderstood as Bhagavan is saying it only Sattva. So what is Bhagavan saying? The faith of each person, the Shraddha of each person is in accordance to one's nature. Bhagavan is not saying that the faith of each person or the Shraddha of each person is in accordance to Sattva. Sattva is indicative of all three natures. But why does he use, if you have to dwell a little bit about, why does he use Sattva to indicate all other natures also? See, human beings, he is addressing human beings here. We have seen enough till now in Bhagavad Gita that the human being is the privileged part of, that's the fact. We can say that with humility, right? That human being is privileged to be able to have Purushartha, human goals, and Purusha Prayatna, human endeavor, and then work on the Agami Karma so as to be able to influence the overall progress in one's journey through the soul process, right? So this human being, Bhagavan is addressing the human being here. And this human being has the inherent capacity to move towards Sattva. See, free will comes increasingly into play as beings evolve. Even as much as coronavirus may have dominated 2 years of our life, coronavirus itself doesn't have the free will to control our lives. Ultimately, the human being will control coronavirus. Maybe some other virus will come take birth. That's a different part altogether. But ultimately, the human being is running this world. So this free will comes into play and more into play as human beings evolve. And the human being is scientifically proven to be a highest level of evolution as of now. The more evolved the human being, the more free will that is at play. And at the level of the human being, this free will has that capacity to turn into faith, Shraddha. And as the human being evolves, so we have talked about beings evolving into human being. As the human being evolves spiritually to higher and higher planes, this belief system, this Shraddha of that person has the capacity to evolve into Sattva. That is the reason Bhagavan says Sattvanurupa. And he says, Shraddha Mayo Yam Purushaha. A person consists of one's faith. And Yoyat Shraddha Sa Eva Saha. What one's faith is, one surely is that only. The attitude assumed by the mind characterizes its Shraddha. A person with Shraddha, a person who has faith, has confidence in oneself. Faith brings in that self-confidence and also has faith in the chosen ideal. We saw in the last chapter that people choose their respective ideal to follow, to worship. Shraddha brings the faith not only confidence in the self, but also the faith in the chosen ideals, whatever that ideal may be. And a person with Sattvika Shraddha exhibits zeal in the discharge of one's duties given the environment that they are in. And when executing one's duties, there is a level of purity with such a person, in such a person. A beautiful example, since we referred to Nachiketa and Kathopanishad, is Nachiketa of Kathopanishad is a classic example of Shraddha. See, the story goes that his father performed a yajna, and the yajna turned out to be defective. And Nachiketa, along with others, the sages, when they pointed out, his father got irritated. And one of the ways to partially atone the mistakes in that yajna was to give up oneself. Nachiketa stepped forward and offered to give himself up. But as his father was so angry and upset and kind of got irritated with the intrusion by the small boy, he said, I give you to Lord Yama. I give you to death. And Nachiketa gracefully and willingly accepted being given away to the Lord of Death. And then when the Lord of Death comes to take him, Nachiketa has a dialogue with him. We will not go into the entire Kathopanishad right now. He has the dialogue with him. And he asks him various questions, based on which Lord Yama grants him 3 boons. So this Nachiketa, who has so much faith, so much Shraddha, even towards his father, the first boon that he asks is for pacification and forgiveness of his father. Actually, the same with Prahlada. The first thing that he asks Lord Narasimha is for pacification and forgiveness for his father. Even Prahlada embodies Shraddha. For the second boon, he asked how to live a life of yajna, how to live a life of sacrifice, how to live a life in which he is able to take care of other people and then think about one's own benefit. The true yajna spirit that we spoke about, that we learned earlier. And for the third boon, he asks for knowledge about what happens after death, the ultimate knowledge. Any growth, see, in life. So this is a beautiful, Nachiketa story is a beautiful example of someone who espouses Shraddha. And any growth, requires a certain amount of positive momentum. We know that well in science. And the positive momentum for human growth comes from faith. Thus, Bhagavan says, one is what one's faith is. We are who we are. Rather, we are what our belief system is. That is who we are. Now, Arjuna had also referred to worship of the people with faith. How do they worship? Yajante Shraddhayan Vitaha. That was another part of Arjuna's question. Bhagavan now addresses that aspect of Arjuna's question, the object of worship, the altar of devotion. The altar of devotion determines the object of worship and the nature of one's worship. That Bhagavan takes up in the next verse.
Yajante satvika devan.
Yajante satvika devan.
Yaksharakshamsi rajasaha.
Yaksharakshamsi rajasaha.
Pretan bhutaganamshanye.
Pretan bhutaganamshanye.
Yajante tamasa janaha.
Yajante tamasa janaha.
Yajante satvika devan. Yaksharakshamsi rajasaha. Pretan bhutaganamshanye. Yajante tamasa janaha.
Satvika, the Satvik Janaha people. Now, Janaha is the last word of this verse. So we have to take that with all the references that Bhagavan is talking about. Satvika Janaha, the Satvik people. Yajante, worship. Devan, the Devas. The Rajasaha, the Rajasic Janaha people. Yaksha Rakshamsi, they worship. So again, Yajante has to come in here. Yajante, they worship the Yakshas and the Rakshasas. And the Tamasaha, the Tamasic people, Janaha, Tamasa Janaha, they worship Yajante, Pretan, ghosts, Bhuta Ganan, the host of nature-based spirits, and other such, cha, anye, cha and anye, other such. So the Sattvic or pure people worship the Devas, the Rajasic or passionate people worship the Yakshas and the Rakshasas, And the tamasic people worship ghosts, the host of spirits that are associated in nature, and other such things. So Bhagavan says Janaha, right? Like I said, Janaha refers to the sattvic people, the rajasic people, and the tamasic people. So people commingle with other people, right? And how do they do that? This commingling happens in accordance with the temperament and the disposition of human beings. The good associate with the good, and the bad associate with the bad. This is called Sangha. So Sangha can be Satsanga or Sangha can be Asatsanga. But this commingling happens based on the temperament or the disposition of the human being. And this extends to the realm of worship as well. So as much as we mingle with each other based on our disposition, we worship deities based on our disposition also. Every human being, there is you'll not find human beings who do not have some kind of a altar for worship. Okay, you may believe in God, but you may not believe in God. That doesn't matter. But for example, Stephen Hawking, he calls himself, or he used to call himself, a atheist. But his altar of devotion was science, the pursuit of science. That was his altar of devotion. So every human being has some altar or another, and then seeks fulfillment of some inner urge through the benefits that altar offers. So you have some altar, and why do you have it? Because you seek something to get fulfilled from it. And the invocations of the persons will be accordingly aligned to what the altar is and what one is seeking to get fulfilled. Essentially, this is yajante. This is what worship is. When you have something which is, you want to follow that and you want to attain that, and some element makes it happen. And when you devote yourself to that element, that is what worship is. People of Sattvika temperament seek fulfillment at the altar of divinity. Bhagavan calls this the devas, the gods. And these gods, they appear to be tranquil. They appear to be godly. Even if you look at, the deities, the murtis, you will find that they are designed in that manner. There is tranquility around them. The Rajasika people seek fulfillment at the altar of demigods. And such demigods are passionate and restless. You see the murtis of those people. You will see Rajasic tendencies even in the murtis. So the murtis, the demigods themselves are, or the gods for these people, the gods for Rajasika people, themselves are passionate. They themselves are restless. They are the yakshas and the rakshasas. The people of tamasic temperament, they seek fulfillment at the altar of spirits of natures and vicious, ungodly powers. We do see those also, right? Where people worship spirits. They are the pretas and the bhutaganas. Pretas are the ungodly powers or the demons or the bhuts, and the bhutaganas are the spirits of nature. Bhuta ganas, the spirits of nature. Now, in today's time, we may question the existence of such powers. However, don't we see? I mean, most of us live in Bangalore and other such places, right? Cycle around, you will see gods who are that Rajasic type of gods. And you will see the worship. There'll be sacrifice, for example, will be a part of the worship. Catching hold of a live animal and cutting it right there. That's extreme Rajasic behavior, right? And we also see the tamasic way of worship, where people invoke spirits and they say the spirit has come. So irrespective of all this, what is the message that Bhagavan, so in today's world, we can align to what we choose to align. But what Bhagavan is also telling us, which is relevant to this Kali Yuga of today, is from the import that we can take from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, is about human association or Sangha. how do we associate ourselves to each other and to the gods? And more relevant so to each other, because most of our time today in today's world are spent with each other. Most of our time today are not spent in worship. There was a time when most of the time used to be spent in worship. But today, most of the time is spent in this samsara with each other. So there, see, for example, help gained from good friends with purity of intentions, with an aspect of selflessness, an attitude of selflessness is sattvic in nature. We see that all around us when people are, so for example, the latest, whether it is coronavirus or Ukraine war, there are people who are helping the refugees who are disengaged from their homes. So you're not driving them away, embracing them, taking care of them without anything to expect in return. That is a sattvic association. Protection invoked from the rich and the powerful. Right? When you go to a politician saying, "Mere liye ye kaam kar do, get this done for me. I want you to use your power of influence as a minister to help get this done." And there is also the show off, hey, I got this job done through this minister, XYZ. There is also that level of ostentatiousness, the dambha in that. That is Rajasic association. And the strength that is derived from low and thoughtless people, people with criminal intent, the gundas of society. Okay, where such effort, it causes personal or general harm to a third party, to somebody else, to an individual or to society. You gain something, the gunda gains something, but in general, society is harmed or some individual is harmed. That is a tamasic association. Don't we see each of these in our society today? All of them are there. So all these are forms of worship. You actually, some people, when they go to a politician or a gunda, they fall at their feet. Forget about falling at God's feet. They fall at their feet. So we see all kind of worship of such nature, all three natures around us. The spirit of devotion remains the same. See, we have to understand this very well. The spirit of devotion. So when a person goes to a gunda or a politician, the subjugation, the psychological, the bent of mind is exactly the same as you would when a person of sattvic nature goes to a temple. But the object of worship, the altar of worship is different. The type of worship, Rajasic or Tamasic, is different from sattvic. There is a beautiful story from Itihasa that is about Gautam Buddha's, and I'm sorry, before the story, see, and you also see worship where there is injury. You will see that, there's piercing, there is all kinds of injury that is self-inflicted and inflicted to each other. That also happens. Such injury, such forms of worship, it actually shrinks the body, mind, and intellect. See, Bhagavan said that the body, mind, intellect, Dehinam, we talked about, right? The Shraddha of the Dehinam, the Shraddha of people who have the body, mind, and intellect. But there are some ways where the body, mind, intellect itself shrinks. So this beautiful story of Gautama Buddha, when Gautama Buddha's predisposition as baby Siddhartha. No, actually, I'm sorry. Take this back. You don't have to, Upasana, you are very engrossed with video recording. No need to delete it and correct it and all that. But I got two stories mixed up. The story that I was going to tell you is something else. But now I'll come back to the story. You will understand. Okay, so now this story is about predisposition of Shraddha. I jumped the gun and I'm going to some other story. See, predisposition of an individual based on the intrinsic type of Shraddha that one has. So this both stories are Buddha stories. That's why I got confused. Baby Siddhartha. So we all know that Siddhartha, the prince, was kind of put into safe custody. You can call it imprisoned in a way, but Buddha was put into safe custody by his father, the king. And we all know that why that happened. It was with an intent to protect Siddhartha. Okay. Why did that happen? That's because before Siddhartha was born, the royal sages, they predicted that either the to be born prince will either become a great emperor or will become a great sage, ascetic. The king obviously wanted his son to become a great emperor, not a great ascetic. And that is why he kept Siddhartha confined with all the luxuries of a prosperous prince. Did not want Siddhartha to get any view of, any experience of the trials and tribulations of the samsaric world, because he felt that those might bend his view towards spirituality. So be a king, grow up a king, and become an emperor. That was his goal for his son. But when the child was born, because this was predicted before the child was born, when the child was born, the sages said, we will see, we have a short demonstration for you. We will see what will become of the child. Let's place a cluster of weapons on one side and a collection of spiritual textbooks on the other side, and put the baby in between. Whichever side the baby veers towards is where the child will go. This is part of our folklore. So the baby not veered towards, crawled with amazing speed towards the spiritual books. And the inclination, the inherent nature, the inherent shraddha that one comes in with is so powerful that despite what the king did, confined Siddhartha till he was probably in his 20s, had no control over what the future determined for the royal prince. Ultimately, we all know what Gautama Buddha became. So this is what Bhagavan is referring to when he talks about you are your Shraddha and your Shraddha is you. Now Bhagavan points out the wrong way of striving. And this he does. We have seen in Bhagavad Gita, especially in the later chapters, chapter 16, chapter 17, especially, Bhagavan also gives caution. He warns. He has done that a couple of times in the past. But here he talks about human behavior. And Bhagavan cautions by pointing out the wrong way of worship, the wrong way of striving. And what is the impact that such a wrong way has on the inner self, on the consciousness that is within each of us. Let us recite verses 5 and 6 together.
Ashastra vihitam ghoram
Ashastra vihitam ghoram
tapyante ye tapojanaha
tapyante ye tapojanaha
dambhahankara samyuktaha
dambhahankara samyuktaha
kamaragabalanvitaha
kamaragabalanvitaha
karshayanta sharirastam
karshayanta sharirastham
bhutagramamachetasah
bhutagramamachetasah
mam chaivantash sharirastam
Mam chaivantash sharirastham
tan vidyasura nishchayan
tan vidyasura nishchayan
ashastra vihitam ghoram tapyante ye tapojanaha dambhahankara samyuktaha kamaragabalanvitaha karshayanta sharirastam bhutagramamachetasah mam chaivantash sharirastam tan vidyasura nishchayan.
So Bhagavan says, Janaha, people, ye who tapyante, practice the tapas that they indulge in, ghoram, terrible, ashastra vihitam, not prescribed by the Shastra, samyuktaha, fully associated, dambhahankara, dambha ahankara, dambha ostentatious, ahankara related to ego, with egoism. Balanvitaha, by the force of kamaraga, lust and attachment. Achetasaha, these people senselessly. Karshayantaha, torturing. Bhutagramam, all the elements. Sharirastham, in the body. Cha, and, or chaiva, and also. Mam, me. Antasharirastham, who dwells within the body. Vidhi, no. Tan, them. Asura nishchayan, to be of demoniacal resolves. So those people who practice terrible austerities, not prescribed by the scriptures, fully associated with ostentatious behavior and egoism, impelled by the force of lust and attachment, senselessly torturing all elements in the body, mind and intellect also, by the way. Body, mind, and Bhagavan says body, mind and intellect. And me also, Bhagavan says, tortures him also. Why? Who dwells within the body. Know them to be of demoniacal nature or demoniacal resolves. Not nature, resolve. The goals are demoniacal. Any practice that does not lead to inner peace, inner calm, inner serenity, resulting in outer stability and poise, is not good for spiritual growth. See, you will see when people practice in such manner, there is no outer stability and poise. And if you examine them a little bit more in depth, you will see that there is no inner peace and calm. There is no serenity in them. Practicing terrible austerities that are terrible and injurious to one's body and mind and intellect. They make it weak, they make it shrunk, they make it powerless. And when that happens, what can you achieve? What kind of a spiritual growth can you make? And Bhagavan says this not only troubles the person's body, mind, and intellect, it is also troubling to the consciousness that resides within each one of us. And such people perform this with ostentatiousness. They show. There is a level of showing there. And they also see that they feel that power of worshipping. It is extremely rajasic actually. So their method of worship is that the deity that I'm worshipping will come under me. I will subjugate through these penances, through this torture, by standing in one leg, by letting, all kinds of physical torture. I will make sure that the deity will come and say, what can I do for you? So in our, Puranas, you'll find a lot of, in our Itihasa, you'll find stories where they make the deity. I will make the deity come to me. I will make the deity comply with what I want. That sense of egoism is there. That sense of ostentatiousness is there. Where I will force the higher. There is no respect for the higher. There is no alignment to the higher. There is no love for God. This is where God, you will come and do what I tell you to do. That ego is there. Bhagavan says that such people are of demoniacal resolves. Now the Buddha story, the Buddha story that I got confused with. Buddha, the master of, said of Gautama. Once he became a master, he said of Gautama, because Gautama was denying the self for a period of time. And he says, rigorous I had been in my ascetic discipline. Like wasted, withered reeds became all my limbs. The penances taken me to physical death so near, and yet far, far away from my goal so dear. Now this Gautama or this Buddha was no way decadent, was no way asuri. He was just denying, he was experimenting. Gautama Buddha experimented with a lot of ways of spiritual growth. If you read Gautama Buddha's story, it's beautiful. It's a classic example for human beings to learn from. He experimented with a lot of ways. And naturally also his father forced him to experiment with a lot of ways of luxury before he went by himself to seek. So it's a classic story of for us to learn from. And he says that, I experimented and it didn't take me anywhere near the goal that I set out to achieve. After 6 long years of, torturing his body, mind, and intellect, Buddha realized, or Gautama realized, the utter futility of self-mortification. And he felt that this body that had become so weak, utterly weakened by his efforts, he would not be able to achieve anything. He would not be able to achieve the goal that he had set out to achieve. And thus, Gautama abandoned self-torture and extreme fasting. And one day, Sujata, it is said that Sujata, who was daughter of a rich householder, offered him milk rice, not knowing who Gautama was. Because by that time he had lots of followers who looked up to his physical torture and followers who looked up to his other levels of discipline. But this lady did not know. She just offered him and she said, "Oh sage, may you achieve your success that you are aspiring to achieve through your sadhana." That is said to be the last meal that Gautama had before he became Buddha, before enlightenment. And now Sri Krishna enumerates the topics that he is going to cover in the rest of the chapter, that he is going to discuss. That's in the next verse. Aharastvapi sarvasya
Aharastvapi sarvasya
trividho bhavati priyaha
trividho bhavati priyaha
yajnastapastatha danam
yajnastapastatha dhanam
tesham bhedamimam shrinu.
tesham vedamimam shrunu.
Aharastvapi sarvasya trividho bhavati priyaha yajnastapastatha danam tesham bhedamimam shrinu. So Bhagavan says, ahara, food, bhavati, which is priyaha, so dear, sarvasya, to all. Trividha is threefold. So also, he says, api, so also, yajna, the sacrifice, tapaha, the austerity, tatha, and danam, the charity. Imam, the bhedaha, distinction, the bhedam, distinction, tesham, of these, shrinu, now listen from me, now hear. Food, which is surely dear to all of us, to all, is threefold. So also sacrifice, austerity, and charity. The distinction of these now here. See, the threefold nature is very clear to us. By now, it should be very, very clear to us. We have read enough of Bhagavad Gita that we know very clearly what this threefold nature, that is of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, are. Arjuna's question is about a person who has faith but does not know the scriptures. And he says, is this person Sattvic? Is this person Rajasic? Or is this person Tamasic? And Bhagavan says it depends. It depends on the type of faith, the type of Shraddha a person has. Tamasic Shraddha implies Tamasic person. Rajasic Shraddha implies Rajasic person. Sattvic Shraddha implies Sattvic person. And that is why you are who your Shraddha, what your Shraddha is, and your Shraddha is who you are. To help identify the type of Shraddha, Bhagavan takes up 4 important indulgences of the human being. Food or ahara, sacrifice or yajna, austerity or tapa, and charity or dana. And Bhagavan classifies these as Sattvic, Rajasic, or Tamasic. We will hear about these from Bhagavan Sri Krishna. We will shrinu, like Bhagavan says. We will start that in the next satsang. Hari Om Shri Krishna.
We'll repeat today's verses.
Yeah.
Chapter 17, verse 1 to 7. Om Shri Paramatmani Namaha Ata Saptadashodhyayaha Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yogaha Arjuna Uvacha Ye Shastra Vidhi Musrijya Yajanti Shraddhayanvitaha Tesham Nishtatu Ka Krishna Sattva Sattva Maho Rajastamaha श्रीभगवानुवाच
उवाच
त्रिविधा भवति श्रद्धा देहिनां सा स्वभावजा सात्विकी राजसी चैव तामसी चेति तां शृणु सत्त्वानुरूपा सर्वस्य श्रद्धा भवति भारत श्रद्धामयोऽयं पुरुषः यो यच्छ्रद्ध स एव सः यजन्ति सात्विका देवान् यक्षरक्षांसि राजसाः प्रेतान् भूतगणांश्चान्ये यजन्ति तामसा जनाः अशास्त्रविहितं घोरं तप्यन्ते ये तपो जनाः दम्भाहङ्कारसंयुक्ताः कामरागबलान्विताः कर्षयन्त शरीरस्थं भूतग्राममचेतसः मां चैवान्तः शरीरस्थं तान् विद्यासुरनिश्चयान् आहारस्त्वपि सर्वस्य त्रिविधो भवति प्रियः यज्ञस्तपस्तथा दानं तेषां वेदमिमं शृणु ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः
Hari Om. Thank you. Any thoughts, questions, or comments?
Yeah. This is from verse 6. Sorry, I missed the first half. There was some internet issue. Well, from you mentioned that whenever anybody, they kind of forcefully gain the attention of God by doing a lot of things, and they're not really, I would probably say in sattvic sense, right? But from what I remember, most of these Saptarshis and especially this Bhrigu Muni, all of these guys would have done quite a lot of, I don't know, meditation. I don't know. I can't call it meditation. Some kind of a thing to, over the years they sit and do whatever, and then God kind of comes and kind of grants all the wishes. Do they fall under this category? Because they are known to be kind of great, no?
I almost expected this question actually. So, see, honestly, who am I to judge? Because some of them are known to be great Maharishis, right? And so I would say, I would interpret rather that it is the attitude of the mind, how the mind is disposed, which essentially determines where they fall under, right? So so what is ritual? At the end of sometimes when people, this is the meaning that I have got to convince myself with rituals, because as I grew up, I was very against ritual. Even today, I'm not inclined towards rituals, okay? But essentially, rituals mean a lot. Rituals are required to enforce, to help us become more and more disciplined. And I served in the Indian Army, right? There are lots of things in the army which are rituals. The way you salute, the way you march, the way you wear your uniform, how it should appear, it's what? Ritual, right? Other than ritual, there is really no significance into it. But it is so crucial to inculcate that sense of discipline within you. But once you have that sense of discipline within you, then that ritual is not that important. Okay, even in the army, when you have that discipline within you, that ritual is not very important. So if someone who is undergoing penance, if Gautama Buddha himself did it, right, and he did it to an extreme, why even Parashurama did it, Vishwamitra did it, right? A lot of these major sages, the big sages did it. If they did it to inculcate a level of discipline within themselves, then absolutely it makes sense. But if they did it to be ostentatious about it, that everyone will see me and will come and touch my feet and I will gain when I come off. So I go and spend 1 year in the Himalayas. And when I come back, I'm like, everyone, you know, I spent 1 year. Can you do it? Versus I go spend 1 year in the Himalayas and, you know, become a better person. That is what it entirely depends on, you know, how you grow spiritually based on the ritual that you practice.
But at the end of it, that's the intention later, that's the attitude later. But the end of it, God did appear and he did whatever he had to do, whatever was asked and all that. So I was kind of
I would say
wouldn't God foresee
I would
this?
say that no, I would rather say that, see, the story goes that God appeared and granted a boon. I would like to personally believe that whatever the person was aspiring towards happened. Obviously, God is the one who is the enabler who makes it happen. If I want to win Wimbledon, I'll put all the austerities, all the tapas, all the rituals into place. I mean, the kind of strain that champions put their body under, you know, Nadal, we saw, withdrew after fighting a tremendous match in where was it? Whichever championship it was, right? I think it was Wimbledon, right? So we saw that, right? The amount you make your body undergo. What are you doing it for? If it is for the higher ideal, it is a positive inclination. If it is for self-torture and showing off, then it is not so. Bhagwan enables the victor at the end of the day, of course. You know, achieving what you are aspiring towards is ultimate result of what you're aspiring towards. And the way you do it determines whether you achieve it or not. So Bhagwan is clearly saying here that if you approach this in a sattvic or a rajasic manner, if you do it in that way, you will not attain spiritual growth. And I don't think I've read any success story of someone becoming a great sadhu by any of these means. On the contrary, Gautama Buddha was a fantastic example for people to learn from. He taught people that it is worthless, it is futile to torture your body to such an extent. He said, I have done it, it did not work. So please don't do it. He has told humanity that. And Bhagavan is clearly saying that, you know, that the way you approach, the Shraddha with which you practice, you live your life is what will determine the progress. Pandu, you were beginning.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Pandu, you can go ahead. You're on mute, Pandu.
Sorry, yeah. You had said that the gods, the idols themselves are different and they have different expressions depending on sattvic, tamasic and rajasic and so on forth. And you also mentioned that in certain rituals, animals are also sacrificed. Now, I would like to understand, see, Kali goddess, okay, is worshipped by everyone, okay. People who considers themselves as sattvic, and then there are people who also offer sacrificing of animals to Kali. So where would that put either goddess Kali or the people who worship her?
See, I would say that the sacrificing of animals, this is my interpretation, by the way, you feel free to reject it with due humility, my interpretation. It is a rajasic tendency, you know, it's not a sattvic tendency. Very clearly, another living being, it's a rajasic tendency when I indulge in the act of, you know, sacrificing an animal, which is taking the life of that animal for whatever offering it may be. That is my part of it. Now, coming to Goddess Kali, I would say my understanding of this would be that Goddess Kali herself represents the power that gains victory over Rajasic and Tamasic tendencies. What does Kali do? Kali defeats quote unquote asuras who are personification of Rajasic and Tamasic, Rajas and Tamas. which is what Bhagavan also says here. So that goddess who defeats Rajas and Tamas at that moment is appearing Rajasic or Tamasic. But once she is done, once you will see in all Kali stories and achievements, that at the end of it all, she attains the Shant Durga. She is Durga and she is Kali. She is both. When she is fighting the... See, even Rama is Purushottam, Maryada Purushottam Rama. There are times when he has got angry. And there are times when he has got angry with the Samudra Bhagavan for not heeding the way of the right. And he has been extremely kind to Ravana before, and even before the last battle, told Ravana, please, even now, can you please go back? Right? So we have seen the angry version of Rama also. We see angry version of Shiva when he opens his third eyes. So all of these quote unquote Daivi representations, Sattvic representations of Daivi powers of gods, ultimately once the target is achieved, they attain the Sattvic, Shant, serene being, which is the original being. It is like Federer, when he's hitting that shot, he is absolutely focused, completely Rajasic. But once that match is over, he is serene and Sattvic, you know. So yes, while you are in the middle of the battlefield, when Arjuna is good, when Krishna is in the middle of the battlefield, he has to have that tendency of Rajas to a certain extent. I wouldn't say tamas, but definitely to a certain extent Rajas. But overall personality of that being, what is it? That is what matters at the end of the day. So Kali, of course, is Durga.
Okay.
That
So
would be
that's on the God's part of it. What about the humans? When I offer a animal sacrifice, will I be Rajasic at that point of time and subsequently I change over and become a Sattvic person?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I would say that animal sacrifice is a very, very Rajasic action by itself. But who are we right now to say that, you know, that person is going to achieve or not to achieve? We are not, that's not up to us. I don't know, maybe at some point in time, every person who does sacrifice goes away from it also. You know, that's what I would like to believe. You know, at some point in time that change happens. The ritual is meant to take you to a level of progress. After that, you have to drop that ritual. You can't carry that ritual if you keep holding on to the ritual, you are not going to attain ultimate liberation. At some stage, you have to drop. It depends on which stage that individual is. That's the best answer I can think of.
No. Thanks, Srini. Thanks.
Hi, Srini. I'm sorry. I had one thing. I'm sorry. I will go slightly on the lines of Panduranga, but one step beyond this. So yeah, that Kali thing had popped up in my mind as well. But here in verse 5 and 6 together, it's written somewhere that by passion, people who torture their body. So from that aspect, like the place where I'm in Eastern India right now, here people also offer their own blood to the deities Kali and Chinmastika. And,
Yes.
you know, in Jainism also, if you see, there is a ritual called Kaya Kalesha, where they pluck their hair. So for them, for the person, the spiritual seeker or the worshipper, it is a ritual. But for the onlooker, it's something maybe very disastrous. I'm sorry, like something very gory. I cannot imagine someone offering blood. So for me, it is self-harm. For them, it is ritual. So from a scriptural standpoint, how do we quantify this?
See, that's why I said, you know, it is up to the individual who's practicing the ritual to determine what level of progress that individual has attained in the spiritual path, and discard or acquire whichever ritual the person chooses to. But that said, Bhagavan Sri Krishna one thing about Bhagavad Gita is everything is very explicit. There is no mincing of words. There is no this could be that. I am saying here that person could be. Sri Krishna is saying, no, that does not work. If in verses 5 and 6, Bhagavan very clearly says, senselessly torturing elements of your own body, whether it is hair or whether it is anything else, he is torturing me who is residing within you. He doesn't mince his words at all. So it is up to those people who torture other beings or their own being to finally one day understand what Sri Krishna is saying. The day will come when they understand, or the Janma will come when they understand. But here Sri Krishna doesn't mince his words. Actually, Pandu, that's also, ultimately that is the answer. Bhagavan puts it very categorically. Don't do it.
Just one thought. I am clear on what you are saying, but Srini, then is it fair to assume that the bhava of the devotee is also dependent on the God that is being worshipped? Like, I am completely aboard with what the Bhagavad is giving the teaching. But if I go and say this to a person who is like in that Rajasic mood, I am sure they will discard this.
They'll discard it. Yes. Yeah, they're likely to discard it. But I would say it the other way around, Kushagra, not the way you said it. The bhava or the shraddha is not dependent on the deity. The deity is dependent on the shraddha. Who made these deities? We only made the deities. So we, based on our shraddha, based on our bhava, based on our nature, we create these deities.
Makes sense.
And yes, I agree that at that point in time, if you tell a person, that person will discard the teaching of Krishna.
I think by this statement you cleared my doubt. The bhava is from the deity. See, if I offer an animal sacrifice to the goddess Kali, then probably I'm a Rajasic person, and if I don't do any of those things but just pray to her with a lot of sattvic thoughts in mind, then she's a goddess for sattvic people.
She's Durga.
Yeah.
That actually the Kali example that you brought up is beautiful, because that the same God is representing both. You choose. You want to see me as Durga, see me as Durga. You want to see me as Kali, you see me as Kali. I am there for you. But in Bhagavad Gita, a lot of statements, is very, very explicit, very clear. There is no mincing of words. He says, this is what you got to do. Yes, it is up to us at what stage we pick it up.
No, I'm thinking about it because I know lots of people who are damaging themselves or their bodies, and it's not any ritual or something. It's just they do it, and I am wondering. I would ask, why are they doing it? And you said that these are practices where there is no love for God, but I feel like these people, they need love for themselves in the first place, and it's maybe their way of getting attention and love, and so I am wondering how one could help these people rather than damn them, or because I know so many people who do that, especially in my country, in the country where I'm from, and these people, they don't have a faith at all. They are atheists, but anyway, they do this because I think they need love and attention by themselves, for themselves.
True, that is true. Yeah, and absolutely no need to damn any of these practices. It's their process of growth.
Really, on this, I have, it reminds me of one more thing. In some village in Andhra, I had seen this practice, walking on coal.
Yes.
It was a demigoddess, and I had the, I don't know, privilege or non-privilege, I don't know what it is, but I was terrified seeing that. And I couldn't sustain seeing it, but again, that's a ritual. That's again a bhava for that person, and they are absolutely okay doing it.
Yeah. Yep. And when they do it over a period of time, the soul also gets completely insensitive, right? It dies. The living cells in that portion die, so you don't even feel that the heat. I guess it's like getting a tattoo, right? You get a tattoo the first time, it is absolutely painful, and then second time it's not. But it is a painful process. self-inflicted pain. Yeah, I can see Amrita has a comment or a
Yeah.
question.
I mean, I just wanted to add to it, but I mean, this could be related or unrelated. I'm not sure, but this is sort of a circumstantial question. Assume that you are sort of in a platonic relationship with someone, and for some reason or the other, it is turning into a negative relationship, and you are betrayed, and for lack of a better word, you are screwed over by that person. So in this situation, don't you think that you should inculcate and project sattvic, but as well as rajasic or maybe even tamasic qualities in order to deal with that person and address the problem and resolve it? So in that sense, in that situation, would you look up to qualities like aggression or dominance and imbibe that from deities like Kali and use that to sort of resolve your problem? Or would you approach it with a sattvic way and sort of just find a way to let go of it?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question, Amrita. So I would say, see, it depends really, right? So what is the goal? The goal there is that you have to get out of it. That I assume is the goal, right? That's where you are. You have to get out of it, and you have to stop that quote unquote constant repeated infliction of pain. Now, what approach you take depends on that other person. So, so ultimately, the other person has to see the futility of whatever other person behavior is being demonstrated, the futility that it has on or impact that the futility of the impact on you as a human being. Anyone who is perpetuator will stop when that person finds that perpetuator's energies are being wasted. So your goal, this individual who is actually the sufferer, the goal should be to make that perpetuator feel that whatever you're doing, your energies are going to waste, going to naught. So there is no point in you doing what you're doing. That is when it stops. Whatever type of, to give you another example, I was constantly harassed by these calls from a quote unquote State Bank of India saying you owe 10 lakhs from a credit card that you took. In my entire life, I never had a credit card. Okay. SBI credit card. I never had a State Bank of India credit card. And then when I kind of stonewalled them, they started calling my colleagues. Okay. So essentially there are a lot of people who succumb and take. Finally, I said, enough is enough. When they started reaching my colleagues, I said, I have to take action now. Till then, I was stonewalling them. Okay. You can maybe call it sattvic because I was not confronting them. But finally, I took a quote unquote rajasic step and launched a police complaint. Guess what? It completely stopped after that. Okay. After the police, and I told them that here is a copy of the police complaint. And then they completely stopped. The first thing that the policeman asked me was, did you pay? Because there are people who pay and then go to complain. Just pay, even though you don't owe that person. Okay, so this is another example. So the point is, how do you make that other person feel that the rajasic or tamasic inflictions are having no impact on you? You are much more solid than that. If that requires rajasic behavior, please show it. If that requires sattvic behavior, show it. If that requires tamasic behavior, show it. For example, me ignoring the repeated calls was in a way tamasic, right? Completely slept towards it, right? So, so show whichever behavior, but that does not define your personality. That does not define your nature. You are employing a tool to tackle a situation. It is like Arjuna, after all the Bhagavad Gita, will employ the tool, will take his bow and arrow and he will shoot towards Bhishma. That doesn't mean that Arjuna is rajasic. After Bhagavad Gita is acknowledged sattvic. Bhagavan himself says that Arjuna, you have Daivi Sampat. Right? So the tool that you employ doesn't make you the person, of the tool that you employ.
Right.
I have something to add here.
Yeah. Yes,
So,
Upasana.
Amrita, this is to address your concern only. So sometimes, like what is one of the sadhanas is let yourself be a tool and play to the tunes of God. So if you think yourself that you have been given this role of teaching a lesson to another person, you can just take it as that much itself, that it lies under your karma. You've been chosen to do that and give that. Maybe not. You're not giving a punishment to the other person, but you're supposed to be teaching something to that person by behaving tamasic or rajasic or whatever. So if you just consider that much and go ahead and do things which are required, you just take it as your karma and you're meant to do this. Maybe that also can be just a thought, like, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of things like that myself. If I feel frustrated for a moment for doing something, I just get into that mode of, okay, God has chosen me to do it. I might as well do it happily without cribbing. And that's it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Did you have some other comment or question also, Upasana? Because you normally switch off your video, you're keeping it on, so I thought maybe you have something. Yes, see, on Kushagra's comment that he wrote to the group, yeah, we discussed this in last satsang also, right? And I had also quoted Swami Chinmayananda. He says, I use anger as a pen. I take it out of my pocket, do what I have to do with it, and put it back into the pocket. Right? So, yeah, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Krodha is something which, if you allow it to fester within you. See, from all the scriptures, one thing we can learn is, first of all, we learn there is something called nature. And that nature has these ways. It is, you can, sattvic in nature, rajasic in nature, tamasic in nature. That itself is fantastic knowledge because it gives us the capability to deal with nature that we are seeing within ourselves and in others. It makes us more equipped to deal with different types of natures, just understanding it. And then it helps us utilize these, aspects for our spiritual growth. So as long as we are not, of course, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Bhagavan says, discard them. Throw them, abandon them, he says, right? But if it is required for a particular, event, it is not that there is Krodha within you. That Krodha is not with, the problem is that Krodha is within you. Utilizing anything as a tool, there is no issue. It's part of nature, utilize it. Bhagavan doesn't say, don't, he says nature is him and he is there for us. So for our growth, we utilize any element of nature. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But he also clearly tells us what are the things that we should espouse and what are the things that we should discard. Any other thought or comment or questions?
This is not related as in to the current discussion. In Karnataka, there are a couple of, I guess in most of South India, there are these, in a way, I guess, demigods. They're known as Nad Devate, Ur Devate and all that for that particular region, but they play a prominent role. Now, in fact, it's one of the, I wouldn't say tradition, kind of an unsaid tradition, despite of whatever category you belong to. In the month of summer, everybody goes to this. It's called Maraman Temple, especially if kids should not get chicken pox. So going to those temples or probably worshipping those deities would that become wrong? But it's like everybody follows that. It's been from a very long time. So what would be your...
See, that's exactly one of the things that Bhagavan is addressing in this chapter. Okay, so this is why Arjuna's question is so brilliant. He says that Bhagavan, you have told very clearly about people who follow scriptures are Daivi, people who completely discard are Asuri. And you have told us that keep the scriptures as your beacon, as your compass, as your lighthouse to follow, right? What about the people who don't have the chance? What are the people who don't? They have inherent faith. So what you are referring to is people who have inherent faith because it's been happening for so many years, because my father has told me, because my mother has told me, my grandfather has told me, my grandmother has told me. So I have to do it because elders have told me. That means I have inherent faith. So this chapter is very clearly for such people. So I think as we go through this chapter, hopefully you'll get the answer to your question. But Bhagavan will use the 4 elements that we talked about, and he will classify them as Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic. So fundamentally, Bhagavan is saying very clearly, move towards Sattvic. There is no doubt in that. Discard Rajasic, discard Tamasic, use them as tools as required because they are part of nature. It is impossible to discard them. In chapter 14, Bhagavan said, it is impossible. They are part of nature. What you identify with is what is important. So if my father says, go to that temple, I go to that temple for his appeasement. I don't identify with it. That is also okay. So it depends. So there is no general rule. You may choose to go for some particular reason at that point in time, but who you are is what scriptures, or the Bhagavad Gita will help you define. You are what your Shraddha is. You are not what you do. Bhagavan doesn't say you are what you do, you are not what you do. You are what you do, and what you do is who you are. He doesn't say that. He says what you are, what your faith is, and what your faith is you. You may have to do certain things to live in this society, can't help it. There are certain things that you have to do. Like the best example again and again, that's why Bhagavad Gita is such a beautiful thing, because Arjuna, after all this, will take out his bow, string it, pull the arrow and shoot Bhishma.
Got it.
He will do it after everything, after all of this. He has to.
That's what I was about to say, that even Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight and kill his own. So that's a karma he's supposed to do.
And there are a lot of, even Krishna will make it appear as if it is, the dusk has fallen and the sun has set, when it is not. So if you're doing something for a higher goal, which is, let's not get into too much of those debates. But point is, there are lots of questions about whether Krishna did right or wrong. It's up to us to interpret after learning and reading. One thing is that when you learn and read, it becomes very easy to interpret. Sometimes it takes repeated, you have to go through it again and again. But definitely it gets easier and easier and easier.
But this killing and fighting is just a metaphor, right? Because for me, I had a huge problem with battle and fighting. But when I just exchanged the word fight, kill and battle and fight, and I just give another verb maybe. And then it helps so much to understand the whole meaning of it. Because if we say Arjuna has to kill because Krishna said it, it sounds wrong anytime for me. But if I say, for example, I don't know if you get what I want to say, but for example, if Arjuna was a great musician and Krishna said, okay, then play, it's for me, it's much easier to understand the whole thing if I don't use the word kill and fight.
Yep, that's right. It is a metaphor at the end of the day. But even if you take modern, one of the things where it helps being quote unquote, they say that India is a spiritually progressive nation, right? And it's been acknowledged, which I do tend to believe in. But one classic example that shows this is the way India has dealt with Indo-Pakistan conflict since 47, right? the Indo-Pak conflict since 47. The fact is today that we do not have the entire Kashmir. As per the geography map of India, you will see Kashmir different. As per the ground reality, Kashmir is different. The quote-unquote India part of Kashmir, right? That is why you call it Pakistan occupied Kashmir. But India, because I would say because of its higher level of spiritual enhancement, we are not fighting a battle where we are claiming that redrawing that geography line and annexing that portion. See, to a certain extent, today's world, we see China do that. They went out and annexed Tibet. If you see spiritual element of it, Tibet was much more advanced spiritually than China was. The level of spiritual attainment in Tibet has come down drastically after the Chinese annexation. India has not gone out and just annexed POK. Can it do it? Of course it can do it. But choosing not to do it, right? Why? Because that doesn't appeal to the spiritual conscience of a nation itself. Forget about the individuals. But if you are fighting a battle because the terrorist is coming in and destroying everything, that is okay. See, Krishna tells Arjuna to fight a battle to quote unquote destroy terrorism in those times. Krishna doesn't tell Arjuna to fight a battle just to annex, and take the kingdom. Krishna was okay. He said, Duryodhana, please give them 5 villages. Okay, please give them 5 houses. They didn't want the kingdom. The war is to beat terrorism. The war is to beat, adharma. So Bhagavan says very clearly in Bhagavad Gita, if you are shooting a bullet, firing a bullet or shooting an arrow to beat adharma, it is okay. If you are doing it for adharmic purposes, then it is not okay. So the way I interpret POK versus Tibet is in this manner, why just go and just annex and redraw the geographical lines? Oh, my country is, did it give anything? Nothing. Did it make us any better off? No. Just harming some people in that process. That is adharmic. But if you are fighting a dharmic war, then it is not really war doesn't become a dirty word. Okay, I think today we have gone reasonably beyond time. So it's especially we started late, so it's late for you in India. If there's anything, anyone else, any other point? Otherwise, we'll. Okay, thank you all. Hari Om. We'll see next Saturday.
Thank you.
Hari Om.